to talk about the Megillah, and I've had a thought that I've been mulling over for some years. This is my first attempt to try to get it out of my head and into a way that's hopefully digestible for others, so we'll see how I do. I'm going to start by saying something rather cryptic and vague, and then I'm going to try to explain it. Okay? So, the Megillah is uniquely Jewish. Okay? What does that mean? Okay. So, I've made some observations. So, here's some observations. The Megillah is the favorite of the Jewish people among the works of Tanakh, the 24 books of the Hebrew Bible. The Megillah is the favorite of the Jewish people. That is not as speculative as you might think. I say that because the Megillah has more midrashim, more translations and targumim, more commentary by far than any other book of Tanakh. It's the only book of Tanakh that has its own tractate of the Talmud named for it. It has, the translations even are sometimes 2 or 3 times longer than the book itself. This goes all the way back to the first Greek translation. The Septuagint is twice as long as the Megillah. This is only 100 years after the story. So the Jews have loved the Megillah since the beginning, since it happened. By contrast, in Christian sources, there's not a single mention of the Megillah or the story of Purim for the first 850 years of Christianity. Of all of the stories in the Hebrew Bible, the entire story is completely missing from the Quran. It's not mentioned. They have almost every other thing is at least getting an honorable mention. They have all of the prophets, all of the stories from our Torah, right? They don't talk about the Purim story at all. So, what is it that we see that has us writing and bringing such a rich background to the story that they either ignore it, or when they do start to write about it, they say things like, one medieval critic says, "I am so hostile to the book of Esther that I could wish it did not exist at all." This is surprising for Jews, usually, because what are you talking about? It doesn't make any sense. It's mind-boggling, right? What is it that we see that they don't see? Okay? So another common critique, right, is that, well, it's not religious. It doesn't mention God. It doesn't mention prayer. It doesn't mention the temple in Jerusalem. It doesn't, or, we're in exile, and shouldn't we all want, the temple to be rebuilt? How come nobody's talking about that? We see mention of Achashverosh in Sefer Ezra. We know they're trying to rebuild the Beis HaMikdash, and we know that Achashverosh is directly involved, sending letters back and forth to Eretz Yisrael. So we don't mention any of this? How can you have a book of the Bible that doesn't mention holidays or praying or any of this stuff? Okay? So, in my opinion, okay, these things are deliberately omitted from the Megillah. Sure, we talk about Hester Panim. We have, clearly, we see HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the Megillah. But at the end of the day, he's not mentioned specifically. None of these things are. It's not an accident. Because the Megillah is about our personal, special relationship with our Creator. It is about the special relationship of the Jewish people with God that makes it almost impossible for non-Jews to relate to and understand. I need to get a drink of water. Okay. So, there are 2 psukim. They're for sure the most famous psukim in the Megillah. This is when Mordechai comes to Esther and he says to her, Al tidami benafshech lihimalet beis hamelech mikol Yehudim. Don't think that you are going to escape, you alone among all of the other Jews. Kim hacharesh tacharishi beis hazos revach v'hatzala ya'amod liYehudim mimakom acher. For sure, we're going to be saved. Salvation is going to rise up from some other place. Va'at uveis avich tovedu, and you and your father's house will be destroyed or be no more. Umi yodea im le'es kazos higat lemalchus. Maybe this is exactly the reason why you're here. Basically, he's saying you are put here in the right place at the right time, just for this. So this transcends just the story. Sure, lots of times in our whole long history, the world has become dangerous for Jews. And Taka, yeah, you have to stand up and fight. But other times, life is great. Life is prosperous. We have everything that we need. So also, maybe you were put here just exactly where you need to be. So it's easy to remember that we have to stand up and fight when things are tough. But sometimes you have to remember to stand up and fight to be a Jew even when things are great. So how do you do that? Well, that's where the praying and the holidays and all of the other things, that's what that's about, building the relationship with God. But when we strip all that away and we don't focus on those things, what we're left with is simply our relationship with the Creator and our ability to just step up and say, here I am. Let's do a mitzvah, or let's come to CTC and learn some Torah. So, that's basically my 7-minute version of something that took me a lot of time to think of. I hope that was okay.
Excellent. Thank you.